Welcome everybody to the Headless Giant podcast. My guest today is Rye, the Codega of Codex of Curiosities. Introduce yourself, Rye. Let everybody know where they can find you.
Hey everyone, my name is Rye. I'm the host of Codega's Codex of Curiosities, and I can be found everywhere. I don't know where I can't be found. YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, Apple, all the above, and every major social media as well. Doing my part.
Well, thank you for joining us here today. So, we're going to get into a little bit of your paranormal experiences and the dreams that you've had that have really shaped your consciousness and the way you see the world. So, let's just hop right into it. Let's talk about some paranormal.
Let's jump right into the paranormal, and I'm gonna jump ahead and I'm gonna jump around a little bit. I would say that one of my most profound experiences happened when I was around 19 years old. Okay, and this is the one that would be like my life changer. This is the one that kind of shaped who I am now and which direction my life is going. So I was about 19 years old. I can't remember exactly. I could have been 17 or 18 or 19. I never wrote down. At that point, I wasn't into writing things down, but of course, I'll never forget this experience. So it happened around that age, and I had gone out with some friends, and we're playing video games at one of my friends' place, and I had come home. I'd gotten a ride home and dropped off, and I live out in an acreage, and it was a nice clear night, and that night the northern lights were out in full force, and I remember standing outside watching them. These ones were all green, and just enjoying it. And but I had to work really early in the morning, so it was like, well, I best get to sleep now. And so I'm trying to fall asleep, but my brain is kind of wired still from the playing video games, and I just cannot for the life of me fall asleep. And I'm tossing and turning in bed, and I'm doing that clock watching thing where I watch the clock and I'm like, well, if I fall asleep now, I'll have 7 hours and 35 minutes of sleep, 7 hours and 3 minutes of sleep, 6 hours and 45 minutes. It doesn't help. It doesn't help at all. It just makes things so much worse. So I'm laying there kind of on my side or on my back. I don't really, not on my back, because on my side or on my front. And I was just like, something. And I don't want to say like it was like mind speak, because people are like, oh, maybe it's mind speak. No, it was like this feeling that I needed to flip over and look up. I needed to look up. So I flip onto my back and I look up, and they're floating above me, about 3.5 feet above me, is this form, the shape, this darkness. Okay. My room is dark as is, but this was a next level of darkness. I could easily see the head, the shoulders, the torso, the arms as well. Now, when it got down to the waist area, it tapered off into like a white wispy smoke, not this dark black anymore. This white wispy smoke that was very Hollywood-esque, is all I can say. When they show you ghosts with this white wispy smoke, that's what it was. But everything was black, and it was just sucking the light in, and I was absolutely terrified, mortified. And now that onto itself is it's pretty scary when you're just laying there and seeing this thing. But the part that really got me was the eyes. I couldn't make out anything else, like like not really any real features, but the eyes were glowing red. Okay, so not like flashlights, but like incandescent red glowing. And and and, and this thing was there maybe only 3 seconds, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, enough for me to get a good look of it, and then it was gone. I i don't remember it actually like disappearing and fading away. It was just gone. um at this point I was as the expression scared stiff, meaning I couldn't move. And some people have said, "Oh, that's sleep paralysis." And no, I was awake. I wasn't sleeping. I was awake. When you when you are scared, or you have an adrenaline rush, you either, there's fight, flight, or freeze. People forget that there's freeze as well. And that's what I did. I froze, did not move, and it was just terrifying. Now, I don't know how long I'd laid there after the fact. The next thing I know, I was waking up in the morning to my alarm clock going off, that I was 6 in the morning, had to get ready for work. I got up. I do actually recall going downstairs to eat. No one else was there, and I'm not telling anybody. This is something that took me years to tell anybody, because at that time, what do you say? This is an experience. It's like, I saw this thing, and this isn't the first time that I've seen something. Definitely not the last either. And so that would be the event that kind of was like this crescendo, this cherry on the top that just kind of dictated everything that kind of went on with my life.
Well, something interesting that I find usually is the eye phenomenon. I don't know if you've ever done this, but if you're in a bathroom after a shower and you look in the mirror and it's all foggy, you'll notice that your eyes in the foggy mirror start to take on a darker quality, like a much sort of darker than the rest of the sort of foggy image. But that, I think, is important when it comes to things like aura viewing, because what you're looking at is something that is sort of like taking in light. Yes. as being reflected back at you, and it's that taking in of light that's really, really important for modulating hormonal cycles and everything else having to do with the sun. But we've got these kind of like black holes that are just sucking in light in our face, and so for it to be projecting light, it has this other dimensional quality to it.
That's exactly it. And this is, doing what I do now, I've heard a lot of stories when we're talking about cryptids, not about shadow beings. When we talk about cryptids, that is a very common thing that's being said, is that their eyes have this incandescent glow, whether it be Bigfoot or Dogman or something like that. But I did talk to another fellow podcaster, Blake Botel from Mountain Man Explore the Truth. He had a very similar experience where he saw a shadow being with red glowing eyes as well. And, it was kind of the first time I heard someone say that they saw a shadow being with these red eyes, personally, and it was like, it was that, I don't know, that confirmation, even though it's something terrifying, it's nice to have confirmation, even if it's something terrifying, because then you're like, okay, well, I'm not the only one. That means I didn't imagine that because that is always something that goes to your mind. Am I imagining this? Did I imagine that? And you're like, no, I swear to God, I saw that. But you still question yourself. And I question myself regularly, especially with all the experiences that I've had.
Another interesting point of confirmation is you don't ever see a full body apparition. It doesn't happen. So when people see ghosts, they think they're seeing a full body apparition because they see more of the form. But most people who see those like full body apparitions notice that there's a part of the body that's missing. It's usually the feet or around the bottom of the body. So to me, that indicates that it's staying within the realm of the unknown. Just like our eyes are sucking in light, they're sort of projecting that kind of observer effect on whatever you're looking at. And if it's fully in this dimension, then it's fully, capable of being, hurt or injured or dissipating or whatever. But it's always got to be a little bit outside of the picture. Even in all the ghost videos you see, something is always out of frame. It's never in the same area. And to me, that's really interesting too, because it multidimensionality,
Exactly. They're kind of still, part of them is still stuck in their other dimension. That's correct. Now, I'm gonna jump to a doppelganger experience that I had, and this was years before. Now we're talking maybe like 6 years prior. I was, like I said, I grew up out in the acreage on a small little farm. What I experienced with that then was, sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. My job was to feed the horses. I was like 12, 13 years old, but I I was responsible for feeding the horses. So my parents and my sisters were downstairs watching TV, and my father had called up to me, asked me, "Have you fed the horses yet?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "You got to go do it." And I was upstairs on the computer. We only had one computer back then, and it was in my parents' bedroom in this dormer. And I was typing, writing out my journal, my daily journal, my secret, innermost thoughts. And so it was secretive to me. So I was like, okay, I got to go feed the horses. And at this time, it was about like, I'm gonna guess like 7 o'clock or in the evening, and it was early. It was fall. Would say it was like a late fall, so the sun had already gone down. It was black outside, and I had the lights on inside. So I go downstairs to the main floor. My family is, they're all watching TV. It was like an awards, I don't know, like Grammys or something like that. I have no idea. And I go out go out to go feed the horses, but I'm very concerned that someone's going to be reading my journal. So I'm walking away, and I can look up into the dormer, and the light is on, so it's clear as day, as you can see inside, because it's dark outside and it's clear inside. And there's someone sitting at the desk, and I'm like, oh, I'm all upset. Like, I know I got to go feed the horses, but I am upset. And this is the part where I got confused, because it looked identical to my grandma. My grandma doesn't live with us. My grandma and grandpa don't live with us. They live, maybe, if we're talking miles, maybe like 20 miles away from us. And you'd know if they were there because they would pull up and whatnot. But and my grandma has no idea how to work a computer as is. But it looked identical to my grandma. She had this curly hair, shorter kind of curly hair. So I go down, feed the horses, and I come back up, and I go into the TV room. I come back in the house, go in the TV room, and I start questioning my parents and my sisters. And like, who was up there? Someone was up there. And because it can't be my grandma, because my grandma's not here, even though it looked identical, but it had to have been someone else. And they're like, no one. We've all been down here. And my one sister said, well, I used the bathroom, like right on the main floor, but no one has left. No one has gone. And it wasn't like I was, and I'll say this. So when I came back after feeding the horses and I was looking up, there was no one there anymore. Right. So it wasn't like I had like something was playing like an optical illusion, and maybe I think I saw something. If that would have been the case, I would have saw it when I came back as well. But there was nothing. There wasn't anything there. So, and when I went back up, everything was in order. Everything was the way it should be. But something took on the appearance of my grandma, something that was recognizable, comforting, maybe, not create any type of fear or anything like that. Maybe it was trying to, and like, I feel that some spirits will do this, whether they're evil or good or whatnot. They will do that to try not to freak you out. But that is that's what I saw. Or who knows, might have been a screen memory.
Well, in either scenario, the idea is that it's your perception that is changing, not necessarily the outside reality. So there has to be some sort of instantaneous finding of that thing in your mind where you're not going to find it threatening. So there has to be some sort of two-way communication happening. If it is, this other being looking in at us. So it's strange, but I think it has a lot to do with, again, that multidimensionality that is so common.
I agree.
Now, do you think that maybe where you're at, closer to the North Pole, that events and anomalies are more common up there than down south?
I actually personally think down south things are more common. Like I believe. We'll talk. Actually, I'm talking U.S. I think the U.S. is one of the most haunted places around. Don't get me wrong. I believe that there's a lot of crazy stuff that happens here in Mexico as well. In Canada, I think it's maybe less talked about. Maybe that's the only reason why I'm assuming that. But more, you're going to find more cryptid related incidents, such as like Bigfoot and whatnot. That's what you're going to see. Perhaps UFOs. There wasn't as many people having talking about ghosts, but back then I wasn't really having many of these conversations as much as I've had now, now that I moved away. But yeah.
Right. Well, I think different areas have different energies that interact with the planet in different ways. And I feel like there's a big difference between America and the type of energies down in Mexico.
Yes.
So one of those instances is the cryptid sightings down there seem to be a little bit more reptilian and more kind of, I don't know, predatory, but not as big.
Yeah,
Right?
not as big as in size wise, you mean, like smaller? Okay, so this is the thing that comes up often is a lot of people talk about the chupacabra. Okay, when Mexico kind of like chupacabra, everybody talks about it. But you mention that where I live, and people will laugh at you. They think the chupacabra is a joke. And I live in the Yucatan Peninsula. It's like, yeah, no, that's an old wives' tale. That has nothing to do. But you mention, what is it here? You mention an aloosh. Now you're talking. And alushes are little people. So when you're saying like things are smaller, yes, I agree. It's not like you're gonna have like these big Bigfoot or big dog man or something like that, but it's smaller. The alushes are more of kind of like, people have described them in different children. Think of children, cherubs as well. They're my father-in-law has some land, and he has a gentleman this Mayan gentleman who works the land with him, and he has told me that he's seen an aloosh, and it looked like a pudgy little naked child, and it was like peeking around playing peekaboo on a tree, and he's in the middle of the jungle, and there's no reason that it shouldn't be there. So he went up, and it was completely gone. This thing did not exist there, and this is like brother-in-law, sister-in-law. You can't throw a rock without hitting someone who's had these experiences with these alooshas. My sister-in-law talks about this one experience with this silvery being, and I was like, it sounds like an alien, almost like a gray type alien. She's like, no, it wasn't. This was like, and it was very pot-bellied as well. That's one thing they describe as kind of like this pot belly. And then my brother-in-law, they were on when he was much younger, they were on this kind of like this exchange, a swimming exchange. They went to a different town to swim at this town, like competitive swimming. And so they stay overnight in other people's homes. And there's a lot of people in this house, and outside they said it was like 2 a.m, and you can hear the creepy children laughing outside, like laughing and playing. And the homeowner got up, and there was a couple of kids in this house, and they're like, what's going on? And they're like, it's the Alushes. And so they prepare a plate of food and slide it out underneath the door. They said after they did that, all that noise outside was gone.
Wow. I love that. You got to make them part of the party.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think that laughing children sound is probably one of the creepiest noises you can hear. No thank you in the middle of the night.
Right. But there are so many instances where the idea of offerings come into play when dealing with these spirit creatures. And you find it all over, sacrifices and all the rest of this stuff play directly into that. And there's also stories about when people go over to the other side, if they eat any of the food from over there, they'll be stuck there forever.
With the Fae, yes.
Not just the Fae, but Hades and Persephone. Persephone ate 6 of the pomegranate seeds, so she spends 6 months in the overworld and 6 months in the underworld. This is why we have spring, summer, fall, and winter.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I did not know that. Yeah, it's the medicine woman that and I'm jumping ahead now. So I'm going to jump ahead that because of that one incident that I told you about with that shadow being, I went on a path of discovery, how do I protect myself and how do I deal with this spirit world? Because the spirit world is real. It exists. And so one of the people that I befriended was a medicine woman. She's a Métis, but trained in the Blackfoot. And so she taught me many, many things, for years, I kind of studied and worked under her and helped her. And yeah, whenever we did sweat lodges, we always set out a spirit plate, and to honor Sasquatch or Bigfoot, one of the things you do, the natives knew that Sasquatch liked peeled grapes. So you would set out peeled grapes. And let me tell you, peeling a grape is not a fun thing to do. You're doing that. You're trying to make that for them. And it's a little difficult. Yeah. And you put it out in the trees or in the shrubs and just leave it there.
But Bigfoot are so electrosensitive. And when you think about grapes, there's that experiment where you put the grapes that are connected by just that little tiny peel into a microwave and hit 30 seconds, and you'll get a plasma arc between the two grapes.
Wow.
So,
I've never seen that.
Oh, check that out. Yeah, but
Well,
the grape
I don't have a microwave. I've stopped using a microwave years and years ago.
Well, you can find the videos pretty easily, and
True.
it's
True.
Yeah. So I think there's something to the idea of maybe electropotential in the foods that are traditionally offered here, because a lot of that is conductivity, and all the rest of the stuff connects to the rest of the planet. And if they are kind of existing on multiple planes at the same time, they have to be anchored by magnetics, maybe force fields. But we can see that some radio waves do have an effect, and they can affect radio waves a little bit more often than just playing around outside. We've got those different ghost hunting materials that scan the radio waves, and then somehow these voices get through. So I think there's a definite linkage between what the cryptids are doing and their weird behavior and the electromagnetic frequencies that they exist on.
I think that's a fascinating thought, and I believe I think you're on the right track with that as well. Oh, that is cool. So where do we go from here? I could keep talking paranormal if you want. We can move on to something else if you want as well. But if you want to hit paranormal, I can talk about maybe some paranormal stories that I have never talked about yet.
One of the things I'm fascinated by in Mexico was the video of these witches, right? Have you seen that witches video? Yeah,
I have
La
not.
Brujas.
I have not seen the witches video. Now, when I was in Central Mexico, many people talked about the green orbs out in the fields, and they said, you stay away from those because those are the brujas. You don't go near the green orbs that you'll see floating off in the distance.
Now, in North America, we have witches as cryptids too. There are certain times when people have been in the woods and then these crazy witches come out and confront them, but it's much more common in Mexico. Much more common. They had this one video where they're showing these things flying around on what looks like a broom.
And I can see Spirit and Truth just said that the flying witches. I've seen those videos. I need to check that out. I need to check that out. No, I have not seen that. Now, brujas here or brujeria is extremely common. Extremely common, and there's different sides to it too. There's a curandero, or there's the brujas or brujos, which is the kind of like warlocks. And it's people like this country is extremely religious, extremely Catholic religious. Okay. But they all have they're very spiritual as well. Like, in Canada, a lot of people were very religious, but they weren't spiritual. Here, it's like, I'm going to church every Sunday, but I'm going to go talk to the bruja to see, or a brujo, because I think my husband's cheating on me, and I want him to turn into, and at times, an animal such as a black dog, and follow my husband to see if he's cheating on me. This is a very, very common practice, and I've heard a lot of stories of people being followed by, like, usually a black dog, and they throw rocks at it because they're like, "Oh, that's my wife hired the brujo to check on me," And I have a good friend who worked at a cemetery who told me stories about like these brujos and brujas, and some of them would get attacked in animal form, and then when you see them next in their human form, they would be, they would have those signs of the attack, whether it be like a scratch or a cut or something like that on them, or bruising. that was what happened.
Right, right. And in North America, at least, the dominant religion up until about the 1850s was folk magic. So there was a lot of folk magic going on in a lot of these different hollers and places, outside of the cities, but still very, very common. And uh, up until the 1850s, that was just sort of the way it was. But then you had this big shift over to the tent revivals and all these different other Christian movements that incorporated a lot of this stuff into charismatic religions, but not so much into the mainstream sort of evangelical religions. So you've got a lot of the speaking in tongues, a lot of the snake handling, a lot of that other stuff that was going on back then, sort of surviving in that tradition with the charismatic churches.
Yeah, it's incredible. It is really incredible to see those types of and they're still around. I think a lot of it integrates into our. Maybe here, maybe a lot of it integrates more here, where they've kind of like bridged both like the Catholic religion and these kind of folk magic together. It's extremely common. You go into the local markets, and you'll find the stores that are set up to sell you the candles, all these magical candles into these special potions and whatnot. And I know we have crystal shops, and I know we have like metaphysical shops like in the US and Canada, but these are a step up. Like they're a lot more I don't know, legit,
Authentic.
almost authentic. Thank you. That's
Yeah.
exactly the word I'm looking for. Not so commercialized. Like this is Julio is making all these potions in the back and whatnot. And you're getting into something. And it's kind of like those ones where you very respectfully walk by and you don't like you don't want to piss off the person working there as well.
Right. Well, there's that family tradition that's happening. And so here it's more like, again, that commercialized thing. We're all individuals. We don't really have these family magical traditions, I mean, we barely see our grandparents, and that's really where it passed down. One of the interesting folk remedies that I remember from my great-grandmother was she said, anytime you're car sick, you take a paper bag and you put it underneath your belt. Car sickness goes away.
Because you're like preparing to get sick? Is that kind of what it is, or?
No idea. But this is one of the things that they passed on in their, family wisdom, and it worked. So, there's so much of that we just sort of lose without having the family transmission of this knowledge base, which is really closely associated more with, more magical countries.
Wow. That's fascinating. That is fascinating that you just, it's really interesting with those kinds of things, like those tricks, and they seem to work. And you're like, well, why does it work? It's really, really interesting.
Right. But I think, the spirit world is sort of being flushed out of our lives instead of, allowing it to foster. And that's an interesting trend, because what we're seeing now with all of the ghost hunting and all of this other stuff is they want to return to having that sort of spirit life again.
True. I agree, because we used to have like the seances were a very common thing, and it seems to have disappeared, and oh God, what was there was a that was in England though, but there is the
Philip experiment.
Was it what? Sorry?
The Philip experiment.
I don't think it was that one. No, but it was called the experiment. There was another one called the experiment as well, where they would lock away film in lock boxes, and the film would get processed and come out as well.
Oh, you're going to love the Philip experiment. So what a bunch of these people did while getting into a seance situation was they decided that they were going to make up a ghost. Okay. And so they wrote all the details down, and they made up this person, sort of like LARPing. They made up a character, and then they wanted to summon him into their seance. And it wasn't working. They kept trying it for a year until they started shifting all of the decor inside of the place where they're doing the seance to the time period that this character was supposed to have existed. And that's when the tables started tipping, because they had created and summoned this thing that they had created with their imagination. It was an egregore.
Wow.
This is the Philip experiment, and they've tried it since with several other characters. But what are the consequences of them creating ghosts?
That's okay. So that lends credence to my belief about Slender Man. Okay, so or even like the Pale Crawler as well. I don't think they were actually legit real things, but I believe we created them. We put enough energy into it and created this thing, such as poltergeists. Poltergeists aren't a separate entity. There's something we've created, and then it grows, it becomes an entity itself. And that usually the poltergeist happens usually because of it's younger people who are going through puberty, and it's almost always girls who create the poltergeist. And it's not like they're doing it on purpose. It's not like they're creating it. It is something because of this high emotional state that they create these things to start to happen. And then it kind of breaks off and it becomes its entity onto itself. That it could even be a possible explanation for the which witch was that? There was a witch. I was going to say the Blair Witch, but that's not it. The Bell Witch. The Bell Witch. The Bell Witch could very much been a poltergeist entity that was created and then became an entity onto itself. But I agree with you totally that, and this also goes to when I was talking with you guys last about time travel, where you put yourself into a room and you make that room look like the time period that you want to be in. And this is what the CIA did, and that you could actually time travel that way. So it's taken a page out of that book, and who knows exactly what could happen.
What if these things are kind of like shells, right? So the things that you have in your mind become a shell that you can sort of put out there. And then what if other things can occupy that shell? Like your experience with the grandmother doppelganger.
It could be.
Instantaneously took that shell, the idea of your grandmother, and occupied it so that you wouldn't see it.
And I was of that age where I was going through puberty at that age. It was because I was younger, and I wouldn't say I was highly emotional, but there's these more raging emotions that are going on in these hormones, because I was writing my diary, my journal, and that's an interesting thought, and like these shells, I have theories about shells as well when it gets to like gray aliens and whatnot. I believe that they are shells, and they are embodied by disembodied spirits, such as which are demons and Nephilim kind of thing. But that's a whole other conversation unto itself.
If you think about it, though, that's the best way to travel, because you create one of these thought forms, you put your mind into it, you're no longer in any danger of being hurt or killed. And then you can, basically see in multi directions. So it's like an anchor point for these out of body experiences would be one of these shells. And so there's lots of potential there that I think is a spiritual technology that a lot of witches and a lot of the brujeria sort of understand. This is why you get the black dog phenomenon. They're creating these shells, they're occupying the shells, and you see it as a black dog, but who knows what could be there.
You don't know. That's a good point. Yeah, I could see it as a black dog, but it could actually be something entirely different.
Right. Green orbs again, right? So green orbs, those could be the passengers inside of the shells, because a lot of that orb phenomena is very closely related to graveyards and other things. I remember when I was younger, I was taking photographs of a graveyard, and it was like this stream of orange orbs was coming out of it. And that could be related in some way to the spirit energy.
Yes, exactly. I think it is. It has to be. It has to be connected.
Right.
Wow.
But these are things.
I'm trying to think if there is. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No. Please go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say it's like the commonalities between shape shifting and the spirit world is taking place on some sort of a physical level. And unless
Mhm.
you can actually identify some of the markers and all of these things, it's really going to be hard to figure out what's going on.
Yes. Yeah, I agree as well. Exactly. It is difficult. It is difficult. Oh, so many things. So many things. Like it's crazy how off track we can get, but it's so great to have these conversations, and to try to throw out these ideas to try to get answers. And that's what we're trying to do, is just trying to get some answers.
Right. And this brings us to that other part of this sort of spirit life, which is dreaming. Now, you've got several interesting dreams that kind of have to do with the same kind of thing. Maybe it's an expanding of these shells.
Yes. So okay. Okay, so I'm going to start with the dream that I've talked about often, in through my show and whatnot. But this is a premonition dream. But before I'm going to do the premonition dream, I'm going to go into the experience of the waking life. So in the waking life, I had this. My wife had met this blind man on the subway, and so they rode the subway all the time together, and they just became friends. And he told her like what he does. He would go to Peru on a mission through his church to hand out audio Bibles and Braille computers, and he would do this every couple of years. He would go down and do this as part of his mission. So he was putting on a presentation at the church, and he asked her if she wanted to come, and myself. Like he said, you and your husband are more than welcome to come. So we said, sure. So we went to the church to see this presentation. We sit down at this table, and it's a large table, so it can seat up to like 12 people or something, or 10 people. And we're sitting there. We don't know anybody. And this lady comes in, and maybe crazy church lady would be the best definition I can give her. So she sits down and she strikes up a conversation with me, and she starts asking me. She's like, "Oh, is this your church?" And I'm like, "No, no." And well, first she asked me, "Do you go?" No, she asked me, "Was this your church?" And I said, "No, it's not." "Oh, okay. So which church do you go to?" And I said, "Well, I don't actually go to church." Well, she's like, "Well, you believe in God?" I'm like, "Yes, yes, I do." "Well, then why don't you go to church?" And I continued the conversation with being that my church is outdoors. It's nature, with what God actually created, not what I created, but what He created. And she starts to get heated over this conversation, and I'm kind of like quoting, like, break wood, there I am, smash a stone, or break a stone, there I am, cut wood, and you'll find me as well. And she is not having it. She is extremely upset, and I'm just keeping my cool. So that's the conversation ended up ending. She kind of like, I'm moving to a different table. And so was it that night? No, it was about a couple weeks later. I was flipping through my dream journal, because I keep a dream journal, and I had listened to this podcast where this person was talking about being abducted in their dreams, having dreams about alien abductions, which I've had. I don't want to say numerous, but I've had some. And so I was trying to find this, and I stumbled upon this one dream that caught my eye. And I asked my wife, I said, "Hey, when did we go to that church?" And she's like, "Well, that was end of February." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." And she's like, "Well, that was Sunday." I'm like, "Yes, I know. But what was the specific date?" So she gives me the date, and I believe it was February 22nd, February 21st, along that line. And I said, "You're not going to believe this." But I said, 4 years to the day, I had the dream of this encounter. So I dreamt that I got into this full on argument with this woman about saying the exact same things, like repeating everything almost word for word, exactly the conversation that happened. And I said, "Here, take a look." So she takes a look at my dream journal, and sure enough, and the only thing she said to me is, "You're freaking me out. I don't want to look at this anymore. You're freaking me out." So yeah, so that was exactly what had happened, and it was 4 years to the exact day. So it would be one thing to have that dream, because I guess there's a possibility of that actually happening. It could happen. But what made it even more synchronistic or just crazy was that it was the exact day but 4 years prior. Oh, you're muted.
That's pretty interesting. Yeah, I see a lot of spiritual pressure in that interaction, right? So you've got these
Yes.
two forces that, have really been at odds for a long time, which is Christianity and nature. It seems like there's this sort of disdain for it a lot of times within this church culture. And it's never made a lot of sense to me, but, you'll have that. A lot of Christians get really turned off by it too.
It's true. It's true. And that's the thing that you're going to find here, like in Mexico, what I was saying that this doesn't really happen. There's a lot more of a bridge of that, it's not really, that doesn't happen as much.
Right. But I think that's one of the things that was happening in the 1850s is that we were becoming a much more industrialized society, much more materialistic, much more manageable. And we all had to go into the cities. And so it was very necessary to get rid of that spirit sort of connection that goes along with nature.
Yes, I agree. I definitely, there's a divorce of that. It really is. I think this divorcing of us away from nature is not good at all.
And that biblical literalism hasn't really helped either, because there's so much going on politically that's just bubbling right there in that biblical literalist pot. It's like, guys, come on, take a step back. Is it really the end of the world? Let's be rational about this. Let's calm down. Is there any reason to get the nukes out? Just calm down.
Exactly. Put it away. Put the nukes away. Let's just talk this out. Yes. I agree wholeheartedly. It's crazy about that, when people just jump to that right away. It's ridiculous.
Well, it was kind of common in the 1840s. There was this group of people called the Millerites up in New England that had decided that the world was going to end in 1847. And so they sold off all their stuff, and they were waiting in these towns for Jesus to return. He never did, obviously. And so they all joined the Mormons. And so they moved out with Joseph Smith out to Utah. So they kind of had this moment of cognitive dissonance, and it made it easier for them to sort of, oh, well, maybe this guy's got all the answers. Let's go with him.
They jump onto someone else because someone else has to have the answers. Yes.
And they already sold their stuff, so what did they have to lose?
Nothing. Yes. They sold their, oh God. Yeah. Oh, 1 second here. Just a advertiser driving by with his loudspeaker blaring on here. That's a common thing here in Mexico. We'll have people driving by with advertising, I don't know, the local circus or something like that.
Nice. We don't have circuses anymore. What happened?
Yeah, we still do here, but there's not much for animals. You're not going to find the animals, but it's performances. And there's traveling circuses are always coming through. I do like that here. They'll come on, they'll set up a tent, and they'll be here for like a little over a month, and then they move on to the next city. It's pretty cool.
Well, I guess it does here. We've got our little summer festival, summer carnivals.
Okay,
they don't really advertise them.
But this is strictly a circus, though. So it's not like it's a festival or nothing. It's just a big circus tent, like your stereotypical style circus tent, and they set it up, and they put on fantastic performances. And I know we normally we took our daughter there, and she thoroughly enjoyed it. My wife wasn't expecting much, but then after, she's like, okay, that was actually really cool.
Nice. Yes.
I
love community events like that. I think that's sort of disappearing slowly with our digital world. Is why do you have to get out and see other people? It used to be, why do you have to get out into nature? Now it's, why do you have to get out to see other people? It's sort of like collapsing in.
They're collapsing that bubble that we live in. Yes, I agree. It's like less and less reasons to go out. It's so true. And that's one of the reasons I started raising bees, keeping bees. So I'm a beekeeper, and it's kind of one of those it's a reason that it's like, okay, I got to go check on my bees. I got to go to the land and go check on my bees. And so
You
sometimes I
should
think we need an excuse.
you should try talking with them. It's actually a lot easier than you think. Talking with bees is something that people have been doing since the beginning of time. The priesthood at the oracle at Delphi was called the Melissae, and they were keepers of bees. They were all women, and they kept the bees. And what you'll find is that some of the motifs inside the oracle at Delphi is all based around the bees, like the Omphalos stone, which means the navel of the world. It was shaped like a beehive, and it had this
Wow.
net on the outside of it that looked like these bees sort of on the outside of the beehive. And that goes back to the story of Zeus. So all of this Melissae, it's like at the very center of some of the world's biggest religions. But, you got to get to know them first. The Mormons, again, their symbol is the beehive. They took that directly from that sort of Greek
See,
tradition.
this is the stuff that I don't know. So that's fascinating, and it's, yeah, I've been learning a lot about the bees, and it's really interesting. It's I don't underestimate them. Don't take them for granted is one of the things, and it's very like was it the last time I harvested honey? I really thought I should leave my bee suit at the site, and I should have known better. And so when I took it off, they decided that it was time to attack. And I got stung once over the eyebrow, once over my eyebrow, and once on my hand, and my eye had swollen shut by the next day. It was like, oh my gosh. So they definitely tell you to make sure you think things through thoroughly and be in the moment. When I'm working right with the hives as well, I'm not being distracted. It's actually a great in the moment exercise. And I'm also, it sounds strange, but I'm learning to listen to them. It's you can hear the sounds they make. There's a difference. There's the sound that they make where they're just like doing our thing, but then there's a sound they make when they're like, okay, you've been here too long now, it's time for you to go. And it's just, I don't freak out much anymore. Like it, and I'm not going to lie that I freaked out a couple of times. I thought, okay, I'm going to keep my cool. And then I started getting attacked a little bit. The one time I got stung about like 7 times in the leg, and but I didn't know better. There's things that I should have been doing. So it's all about learning, listening to them and learning about them, and learning what the smoke is used for as well. It's very important as well.
Well, we have some of the most docile bees in the world up here in North America, and they are just, I mean, I've never seen bees so lazy. Like you give them a little thing of sugar and they are just happy for a week, and it's like,
Yeah.
give me something here, guys. But I think the more aggressive hives actually have a lot more to say. If you think about the right hand and right eye, right?
Hmm.
What they're saying is you're not seeing something and not doing something right. That's why they sting you in the places they sting you. You'll often find that
Interesting.
if you have different ailments, they'll actually sting you in the
Yep.
corresponding chakra system for those ailments. They're reading your energy pretty clearly.
Well, this is something that I did note. The one time when I got attacked in my leg, it was down by my ankle, my right, was it my right or left ankle? And previously, just before that, I actually got a nail stuck into my Achilles tendon on that foot. I, I I'm the king of freak accidents. So if anything, like freak accidents, there's me. There was a piece of board that had a nail sticking out, and it like fell, and it kind of did this pendulum move and lodged right into my Achilles tendon. And I like tried grabbing it, and I couldn't pull it out. I had to like really like pull it out. It didn't hurt. And when things don't hurt, that's when I'm like, uh-oh, this isn't going to be good. Because it's probably a lot more serious than it really is feeling. And of course, I had issues walking for weeks and weeks. Like they actually said it would take about 2 months to fully heal. So that was crazy. But yeah, it was interesting that I had just about fully healed, and then they hit that same spot, and it wasn't lost on me. That wasn't lost on me. I knew that. I was like, that's interesting. That's interesting that they hit that spot.
Right. Well, What you'll find is that you can speak like the whole mind speak phenomena. It's
Yeah,
really not as hard as you think it is. And if you're talking with the queen, it makes it a lot easier to collect honey. Let me just tell you, it's just worlds of difference because she's like, no, don't freak out, everybody. She's the one who's basically starting the hormone chain reaction throughout the rest of
correct.
the hive. So as long as you can kind of maintain a good relationship energetically with that queen, the
Yep.
rest of the hive is going to be great with you. So
I agree totally. I actually think. Well, I'm not saying that I knew that, but I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense because she is the one who has the end say in all this. You know, and maybe so. I have two hives. One that is they're the inverse of each other. I have one that is extremely almost overpopulated and just crazy. And then I have the second hive that I'm actually starting to worry about because it's less and less bees in that hive. So every now and then I will transfer a frame over because you pull out the frames and you can see that it's full of crias, which are larvae, eggs, I'm switching it over to the other one. But one thing I noticed is you can tell which eggs are the queen eggs. So there's, and I was thinking it would be good to bring a queen from this one into this one so that it will eventually hatch and they can actually replace that queen because I don't think the queen in the second one is doing well. It's funny. The eggs, the larvae, they look kind of like if you got the hexagonal kind of shape, just like this, it's flush in the front. A regular egg is just flush in the front, but the queen egg, it actually on the outside, it kind of looks like an
that's
end
out.
of yeah, and it looks like a peanut. It actually looks like a small little bit of a peanut. It's kind of like all dented in and whatnot, not like a peanut shell, not like an actual peanut, but the peanut shell. And so I was taught that, and I was like, okay, so this one had two of these. So I decided to give that a try. So we'll see. Hopefully they can hatch and hopefully they can start producing more in there. But that's a little off topic, but yeah.
No, I think bees are perfectly within the realm of weird. There's so many different stories I've heard from beekeepers about having dreams involving the bees, telling them messages, playing him certain songs. There are so many different spirits, and not even to mention the fact that the bumblebees shouldn't be allowed to fly. Under the laws of physics, they're not supposed to be flying, and yet they do. What's happening with that? Is there some sort of anti-gravity tech going on with these bugs?
And it's interesting you say that with because I had a dream about my bees recently, where someone had moved them into a building, like, and I discovered them. They were in the shed, and it was kind of like to protect them. And I was like, oh, okay. And then there was a lot of other bees within there as well. And I noticed that, and it's kind of funny you say bumblebees. There was these huge, like very large bees that just look completely weird. And I was like, why are they in here as well? So yeah, so that's interesting. I should, and like I said, I haven't been writing down my dreams as often. That was one of them, and I'm glad you reminded me, so I can actually write that dream down, so I can start to remember them again a little bit more.
Maybe the sick hive is trying to tell you something.
It could be, yes, and I agree. Two queens can be bad, but you're not going to have the second queen out. It's in its egg. It's fine as long as it's in its egg. And but the one hive though, it's to the point that I actually need to I need to expand it. I need to either create a second hive or put a third tier on top, which I don't want to do three high. I'd rather just create a separate colony all to itself.
Well, in this dream, do you remember what the two big bugs were doing? Because that could be a symbol of the queens.
Well, it was a whole new colony. It was a completely different colony of bees that did not they did not have a hive. So it was a large, and they were bigger, and they did not have a hive. And they were kind of like, because it was in this shed. It was like more like a greenhouse. It was a shed. It was wooden with glass. And my hive was at the very back. One of my hives was at the very back. And these bees had kind of come into this greenhouse, and they were congregating in one spot. And I almost looked like glow bees, if there is ever such a thing. They were glow bees. Like the ends of them were kind of like this, had this glow to it, almost like a light bulb, like even that big of size too.
Could it be a spirit thing? Maybe that's the symbol that they're trying to show you about some sort of bees in the area, or like spirit bees in the area that could be throwing off the balance. Because
It could
again,
be.
like this could be how they're getting the message across. See, it's just you don't know what you're looking at because it's all from the perspective of a bee.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. So I think I need to get that hive ASAP. I've already know where I can buy a new hive for fairly cheap. Like it's of course I live in Mexico, so it's 420 pesos. So a new hive, I'm going to tell you this cost because it's going to blow your mind. So a new hive is 420 pesos, and that includes all the squares inside, like the we call them frames inside. 420 pesos is $21. Okay, so which is, it's crazy. It's like, what is that all? The only thing I got to do is I just got to get the top covered with aluminum so that it becomes waterproof. That's the only thing I got to go and get done, which I'll probably get charged the exact same amount. I'll probably get charged 400 pesos to do that. Maybe I can try doing it myself.
That's funny. So, have you ever heard of mad honey?
It's a honey that can make you go. Is it kind of like a psychedelic honey or a honey that can make you go insane? It's one of those two, right?
Yeah, what it I think it's some plant that's related to the potato plant, but they're collecting all of the pollen from that. And there was this one book, it's called, shit, I forgot the name of it, but it was about a story kind of like what's his name, the psychedelic guy, Don Juan. Do you know
Oh,
what I'm talking
Don
about?
Quixote. Don Quixote. Oh, yes. Don Juan, not Quixote, because is it Don
Oh
Juan
no,
Quixote? No,
it was in
no.
Mexico. It was Don
Yes,
something.
yes, yes, yes. I know exactly who you're talking about. It's not Don Quixote. It's, yes, it's the teachings of Don Juan. Yes.
Right. Well, he wrote sort of like a B version of that. He was claiming it was reality, just like the other Don Juan stories were, but they turned out not to
Carlos
be.
Castaneda. Yeah,
There you
it is
go.
Don Juan, and it's written by Carlos Castaneda.
Right. So that's interesting that it sort of took place on the idea of these bees and having this ancient priesthood related to the beekeeping. And they were talking about this one place they called Potato Island, which was like a little island off of England that had all of these nightshade plants growing there. And you would have
Okay.
to be initiated into the cult, you'd have to eat this mad honey, which was this nightshade honey that was made from all of these toxic madness type plants.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
And so Nick is saying, have you ever heard about using honey from a particular area to relieve hay fever? Honey, a lot of people know in this area, like there is a lot of uses for it, medicinal uses for it. Like if you have like eczema or any type of like skin sores or anything like that, you put honey on it and it will cure it. It is amazing. And for those who don't know, honey is bee vomit. Just to let you guys know, it is bee vomit. So yum yum.
Right. And it's if you eat the local honey during the wintertime, it will
Yeah.
prevent against the hay fever because there's something about the separation time between the introduction of pollen and secondary introduction that you get a lot fewer symptoms. So if you're taking the bee honey all that's locally grown, that's going to prevent the pollen from taking such disastrous effects.
And there's also mixing the honey with garlic, raw garlic, and you mix it. It's supposed to like cure your colds like nobody's business. So that's one thing I'm going to try. I also want to try if I can get because I'm a little concerned about that one hive. Like every 20 days I should be harvesting honey, and I went back 20 on the 21st day, which was Sunday, and the one hive, the top level of the hive is empty. It's empty. Like there is a little bit of honey, but not much. The first hive, there's not as much honey as I'd like, but there's a ton of eggs. So like that population is going to explode very very soon. So like I've been saying, I need to get that. I need to get that other hive going soon.
Right. So have you ever heard of the mellified man?
No, mellified man, not at all.
Oh, so this is the Chinese medicine that's
Or
made
hang on,
from the.
is it the Muffin Man, the one that lives in Drury Lane? No.
No, but close.
Sorry.
So this mellified man is a monk who has decided to mummify himself using honey. But the way he gets there is by eating honey every day and only eating honey. And then, well, let me read it for you. A mellified man, known as a human mummy confection, was a legendary medicinal substance created by steeping a human cadaver in honey. The concoction is detailed in Chinese medical sources, including blah, blah, blah of the 16th century. Relying on secondhand account, the text reports a story about an elderly man in Arabia nearing the end of their lives who would submit themselves to the process of mummification in honey to create a healing confection. So back then they used to believe that these mummies were actually medicine, and so they would eat the body of these dead people. And this was a mellified mummy, so it was basically a human that was mummified in honey because, honey doesn't spoil.
Well, I've heard of mummies being medicinal, but I haven't heard of like this confection of a honeyed mummy. That is disgusting. Like I know, like the British, the people from the United Kingdom would eat mummies. They would grind up mummies and eat them, which is crazy, disgusting. What the hell are you people thinking? Like,
I think it brings up the concept of ambrosia from Greek mythology. They had this substance that would create everlasting life, and honey is like the substance that just goes on and on and on forever and doesn't really spoil. So
it does.
there's
Yeah,
something to
it
that.
can crystallize, but you just heat it back up. If honey crystallizes, you just heat it back up, and it will regain its original form. But wow, the ambrosia definitely sounds a little bit like that.
Exactly. And that ambrosia / honeyed effect, what if they're trying to create some sort of everlasting elixir using a human body and honey?
Jeez. No, thank you. No,
No.
I'll just eat my honey as normal, but that's about it. Yes, I like the taste of honey. I like eating honey, but I don't want to be mummified and eating a mummy honey, a honey mummy. I don't know what to say that. A honey mummy honey. Yes. No, thank you. Wow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Chinese medicine, what can you expect? If it's not
true.
that,
It's
they're taking a baculum off of something and grinding it up and giving it to you in powder.
a what? Sorry.
You don't know what a baculum is?
No. Is that a phallus?
It is a phallus. So in most other mammal species, they have a penis bone.
Yes.
And
yes.
I think it's used in a lot of different traditional practices because if you think about it, whenever you see an animal skeleton, you'll never see a baculum. Something has already started picking the bones, and that thing's gone. So I guess it's highly valued in the animal kingdom. And if you're a witch doctor and you're looking at them take that thing, you're like, that must be the thing that everybody wants. So that's going to be the thing for magic.
That's the thing I'm going after. I'm going after the baculum, the phallus. Yes, it's yeah. That I kind of figured that maybe that's what you were alluding to because yeah, it's like ground up black bear. Yeah, that seems to always be it. Always be the thing. Yeah, no, thank you. I prefer not to be eating that or drinking anything like that. Though I'll stick to my. I do stick to my natural style medicines. You know that my wife introduced me to, and even though I was kicking and screaming all the way, I do believe more and more every other day in it. But yeah, like diatomaceous earth, I think is just such a healing. Like I was having stomach problems yesterday. I decided, okay, time to drink my diatomaceous earth, in some mixed water. And then also there is CDS. I don't know if you ever heard of chlorine dioxide solution. this is like your cure-all for just about everything. So it's like, okay,
Really?
do that. Yeah. It's of course it's going to be illegal in the U.S. and Canada, but you can literally buy it on Amazon here, or doctors prescribe it as well. Now you can find it in U.S. and Canada quite easily. You go to a camping store, and you want water purification tablets. In essence, that's CDS. Now, CDS isn't necessarily the cure. It actually allows your body to heal itself. So this is the big thing. It also works with in hand with DMSO. If you know what DMSO is, and if those who don't,
I got some. Let me grab it
there
real
we
quick.
go. Yes. So while he's going away, everybody, if you have not heard of DMSO, Google 60 minutes DMSO, and you are going to get a quite a wake up call. And the issue with these medicines is they're dirt cheap, so that's why they're illegal.
Right.
If you can't make money on it, make it illegal then.
Right here, I got DMSO. This is dimethyl sulfoxide.
Yeah.
And so DMSO actually comes from trees, and it freezes at like 62 degrees, which is really interesting. So, it feels normal out. Then you pick up your DMSO and it's all frozen. You're like, what the hell? Is there crystals in this? No, it just has a really high freezing point. And it's crazy good for going through skin. So anything you mix with it is going to instantly go through the skin.
Yes. So CDS and DMSO work hand in hand. They work so well together. Okay. So if you have any skin irritations, I know I said honey earlier, but if you don't have honey is easy to get, but you've used DMSO and CDS. So first you clean the area with CDS, then you mix it together, DMSO and CDS, and you apply it onto any type of issue you had. My wife had a broken blood vessel, and normally that would take like 2 weeks maybe to clear up. She had it cleared up within days. Okay. And that's in her eye, like blood red in her eye. And it was almost 100% after 3.5 days of, putting DMSO not directly on her eye, but over her eyelid, such as like this, because it pulls it in. It's amazing stuff. Now, CDS here is something that is widely available. I can order it on Amazon, and it's dirt cheap. And like I said, you can find it in the US and Canada in pill form, and those are your water purification tablets. They also use it in hospitals to purify blood. If there's been any contaminants in blood, they use CDS. So if you Google CDS, your top results are going to be like scary. It's like, oh, it's going to kill you. Don't do this. Okay. And it's not like I'm a big Trump fan. I kind of stay away from most politics. But when Trump said, when people are like, oh, he's telling you to drink bleach. No, he's talking about CDS. CDS has, because it's chlorine dioxide, so it gives off a chlorine smell. Okay, it's not bleach. I'm telling you this 100%. It took me a while, and I was against CDS in the beginning because I was like, it smells like bleach. It's bleach, until I actually see it work. One example, my dog just had parvo. Okay, parvo. If those who don't know, parvo virus, she had gotten it. We had taken her to the vet on just not this Monday, but last Monday, on Easter Monday. We took her in. The vet's like, you need to leave her with us, and we need to administer all this medication, blah blah blah. And we said, no, we're going to take her with us. And they said, well, if you take her, she only has a 30% chance of survival. I was like, no, we're taking her. So what I did, and I'm not a veterinarian, I'm not a doctor. This is what I did for my own personal thing.
It's for entertainment purposes.
Purposes only. I use DE, like Ike is saying here. I use diatomaceous earth mixed with electrolytes, and I gave her that every hour. Okay, and then every other hour, because I would spacing them by half an hour. So one would be from, let's say, 8:30 to 8:30. At 8:30, I would give her DE and electrolytes. At 9 o'clock, I would give her CDS. I would give her 3 of this mixed down substance. I would give her 3 milliliters of it diluted. and then I would just keep going. Okay, so at 8:30 I would do that. So then 9:30 I would give her DE and electrolytes again, because I needed to keep her hydrated. And then, at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, I would give her CDS as well. It was a little bit slower than I was hoping for, but I would say by Thursday, so that was on Monday. By Thursday, she was probably about 85%. And
Nice.
the veterinarian said that they needed to keep her for 7 days, and they were going to charge us an exorbitant fee to keep her. And that if we kept her, she would only have a 30% chance of survival. So I'm just saying that this is the proof. You really need to see it for yourself to see it work. And it, like you said with your DMSO, it works hand in hand with DMSO.
Right. So I got DMSO eye drops too. That is like 30% DMSO.
Really?
Yeah, mostly water, and it's got vitamin C put in it too. And so the idea there is that maybe your eyeballs aren't getting the right amount of nutrients for the blood flow. So you put a little DMSO in there. Yeah, it burns for like 30 seconds, but then it's completely gone, and then your eyes clear up. No more redness, no more puffiness.
Interesting.
Pretty good. Yeah.
And like, we're talking about all this medicinal, I don't want to say medicinal, we'll say treatments. We're talking about these treatments, such as ascorbic acid. That's another thing, that high doses of ascorbic acid or high dose vitamin D is also something that I do as well. If you start to feel sick, my doctor, and I'm not going to mention his name, my doctor, he's quite the he's quite the alternative style. He calls it the vitamin D hammer, and he would take like 10,000 milligrams of vitamin D if he started to feel sick. Now with vitamin C, ascorbic acid, you drink heavy amounts, and you need to find your tolerance for ascorbic acid when you are healthy. You're taking, like, it's like every other minute or every like couple of minutes, you're drinking about like a milliliter or a milligram of it, or like we'll say a quarter spoon of vitamin C or ascorbic acid, and you drink that, and then you drink it again, and you drink it again, till you find your tolerance level. And your tolerance level, because the only way you can overdose on ascorbic acid is you need to go to the bathroom really, really bad. So it kind of is a laxative of sorts, and that means that hit your. And the reason why you do that is because you find out your maximum dose. You're like, okay, this is the most I can have within this amount of time. When you're sick, it's almost doubled. You can actually drink almost double of that. So vitamin C, or I keep saying vitamin C, but it's the same thing. Ascorbic acid is very, very good for you. Now, if you are, let's say you start getting a sore throat or a sinus infection, and you really want to hit it hard, this is hardcore. My wife does this, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to do it too. You snort ascorbic acid. So you snort it up. It is so painful, but oh my God, it works. Like, you do it once, maybe twice. That is it. You are good. So you're not dealing with a sinus infection, a sinus cold for like a week and a half or however long it is. It is one night done. But man, is it is it a pain in the ass? Yes, saltwater neti pot works as well, slightly, but not as good as ascorbic acid snorting. And let me tell you, it is. You don't like snort a whole bunch, and it looks terrible. Like, you like go answer the door, and you got like white stuff coming from your on your mustache or something like that. But man, does it work? But man, does it burn? It burns.
I can imagine. That is, man, the DMSO eye drops, I think that's about as risky as I'm going to go.
Yeah, the things we do to stay away from, I don't want to call it modern medicine. We'll just say petroleum-based medicine.
We'll just call it the third leading cause of death.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We'll
And
just
if those
call
who
it
don't
that.
know, if people don't know that, you need to Google what is the third leading cause of death. I think it could even be higher than that right now, considering what happened in the last like 4 years there. I think it might be even the first or second now.
40% all-cause mortality. 40%.
Yeah.
That is not third leading cause of death. That is first.
You don't go to and this is the thing, is you don't go to the hospital to get better. Okay. The Western medicine is great for broken bones or kind of like a surgery if you need that, to repair something. That is Western medicine. The petroleum-based products that they use to treat you, no, that is not. And and when I said you go to the hospital to get sick, I'm not lying. There is so many staph infections that are floating around, flesh-eating bacteria that you will pick up at the hospital. It is extremely dangerous to go to the hospital because if you go in for one thing, you're going to come. There's a high probability you're going to come out with something else. Like I have a friend who had his leg amputated, and I'm sure some of my listeners know him. He's gone into the hospital many times, and then he's come out with extremely bad infections. And I'm like, I don't want to be that guy, but I'm like, dude, you're getting that from the hospital. It's not, there's no other reason, like they're doing this operation. There's a reason why you're getting an infection. It's nothing to do with your body. It is something else that's there. Yeah.
Right. And I heard some, the worst, trapped inside of your own body stories from people who've been put into, medical comas. They'll be conscious for like 10 days and they won't be able to go to sleep, replaying the worst parts of their lives over and over and over again on repeat. It's like hell on earth. And that's a medical coma. So they were doing that to people over COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. It is crazy. So my suggestion is try to stay away as much as you can from the hospital. Only go there if you need to. And with these types of things that I'm talking about, look into them for yourself. Don't trust Google, the first couple things of Google. There was actually, so CDS is a derivative of, I don't know if you ever heard of because I know you said you don't know CDS, but have you ever heard of MMS? Or the Genesis 2 Church, okay? The Genesis 2 Church is something that was made illegal as well in the U.S., but they made it a church so it could be a sacrament. MMS is kind of, it's another form of CDS. CDS is kind of like MMS, but it's a lot easier to ingest, okay? But they made a church called Genesis 2, and if you look it up, they're probably going to tell you how kooky these people are and everything, but this is what they do. They discredit, they try to make it look so, they throw paint on them, they try to discolor it for what it really is. But if you look up Genesis 2 and MMS, you can actually find a documentary called The Universal Antidote. And if you look into The Universal Antidote, you'll see that NASA was using it. They used it to cure malaria. They used it for a lot of things. And CDS, like I said, is another form of, it's kind of like this lighter form of MMS.
Have you ever heard of Ormus?
I have not.
So they call it monatomic gold.
Okay.
And they say that you can get it from seawater.
Okay.
And so basically, it's monatomic elements and in M state materials. So what you do is you're basically taking salt water and you're adding, I believe it is baking powder to it. And the resulting reaction will start to create a particulate of monatomic elements on the bottom of the dish. And if it's seawater, you've got all of the elements necessary for the human body right there in that seawater. And you're taking that Ormus out and you're ingesting it basically as these monatomic building blocks for your body. Because if you know about the what are they called? The electrolytes that we have. So you've got calcium, you've got magnesium, you've got all these different electrolytes that are floating around in our body as these chemical salts. Adding to those minerals using the Ormus actually improves the electrical conductivity of the mind and body, which I think is pretty interesting. You've got this network of fascia or connective tissues that are really, really dependent on getting the proper electrolytes, or else they usually end up drying up, and that's when you get more injuries. So you've got to sort of keep them hydrated with the electrolytic water. And then you could add, well, I don't want to even say structured water because I don't know what's going to get banned anymore. You know, I mean, it used to be that you could talk about all this stuff, but now
Yes,
YouTube's just,
exactly. What is in water anymore?
well, it's the structuring of the water that's so important. It's like,
Yeah,
am I cutting out? Kidding. Hello?
a little bit. Yeah,
Okay.
I can hear you.
So there's this great book
Yeah.
called The Fourth Phase of Water. And that is by this guy, I forgot his name. But if you look up the fourth phase, it's talking about these easy zones, which are these zones where a particle will create around the outside of it if it's a hydrophilic compound. And so what this guy realized is that that was very important for electrical conductivity in the water. And so these easy zones produced this change in charge from one side to the other. And so he's finding that a lot of these charges were lined up in water and it could create sort of like a battery effect. And so that's what structuring water does, is it creates sort of a battery effect in the water itself. And if you're ingesting the structured water with some of these other minerals, you're talking about maximizing the absorption and everything else. I mean, add some DMSO to it, for frick's sake, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Ooh, that's interesting. That is interesting. Yeah, because water is definitely something that we need to look into so much more, and why they're poisoning it, why they're literally poisoning our water. We got to be careful with that.
Right. Well, I think there's a huge component of spirituality that is connected directly to the water. And the attack on the water is basically an attack on our spirit. And we can see that in every other aspect of our society too. It's sort of like numbing the consciousness, keeping people in a lower vibration and not being able to concentrate. Poisoning the water is not going to do anything to help that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And putting that good old fluoride in the water sure doesn't help. It is dumbing the population. It literally is dumbing the population. And there are studies that prove that, and people are still like freaking out because they're worried that their teeth are going to get worse. And like trying to put fluoride onto your teeth through drinking water is ridiculous. It is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Like if those people are so worried about fluoride, then keep brushing your teeth with fluoride. That would, I guess, do better, even though, those of us who know don't brush with fluoride anymore. But yeah.
Well, our teeth are made out of what's called hydroxyapatite. Hydroxyapatite. Where do you hear the fluoride in that molecule there?
Right. Yeah. Why do we need fluoride? Yeah, why don't we look into what's causing the cavities instead of like, fluoride prevents it from happening? Well, why don't we look into, like, it's always this Band-Aid solution. There's always this Band-Aid type solution. Instead of trying to solve the problem, let's put a Band-Aid over it.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, they say fluoride, but if they use the real name, hydrofluorosilicic acid, it might get people a little bit more nervous about what they're using, these fluoride hexanes that are produced from the runoff of aluminum mills.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. What can we do with that? Let's put it in our drinking water. Yes, great idea. Yeah.
So, I mean, you got to assume there's a little bit of aluminum runoff in there too, and we're being assaulted on all sides by aluminum. This is aluminum barium salts in the chemtrails, which they basically confirmed the other day when Bill Gates and all the rest of them said, "Hey, we're gonna spray this stuff over England because England gets way too many sunny days, don't you know? England, of all places, that's where they're going to start officially chemtrailing us." From England, the place with all the problems,
officially, yeah.
too much sun.
Yes, right. It's so ridiculous, and I can't believe, like, we're literally on the cooling cycle. If people don't realize this, we are on actually the cooling cycle. This isn't we're headed for a little bit of a cooling down time. And if I don't know, I'm just like, there is I believe his name is Lee Hempel. No, Lee. What's his name? This gentleman, he does climb. He has a. I'm stumbling here. He has it's like Climate Viewer or Climate Watch or Climate Watcher or something like that, and he goes into great detail about this. That no, we're not warming. We're cooling. We're definitely cooling.
Right. And I think that's a big sort of fear having to do with not being able to control the environment. Because I mean, look, if you're going to have a successful real estate business from now until the end of time, all you have to do is control the weather. And you could have a successful real estate business all the time because you could just have a tornado touch down someplace, steer a hurricane, and now you got all this land that you can buy up for super cheap and turn around and sell for a massive profit. And so I think the whole land angle is sort of lacking from all of this geoengineering talk, because we already know they do this as a hobby. They love to manipulate world events to make the maximum possible profit. Why wouldn't they be doing that with geoengineering too? I mean, all these people have their, big houses on Martha's Vineyard and all these places really close to the ocean. They can't believe that the ocean's actually going to raise in levels because they own beachfront property. So there's got to be something else to it.
That is so it is that they, like, talk about insurance companies or bankers. Would a banker ever or a bank ever not issue a loan? Like if I had a bank, if I was a banker and I was issuing loans, I would not issue a loan on these oceanfront properties if there was rising sea levels. That's a bad investment, because the bank isn't there to lend you money just to lend you money. They're there to make money. Okay. And if you foreclose, they're going to lose money. If your house goes underwater, they're going to lose money. So come on, people. Let's think about this. And there's so many diehards that are like, we're going to die. We're ruining the community. Like, you're giving our species way too much credit. That, like, don't get me wrong, I'm all for not dumping garbage. I'm all for cleaning stuff up. I'm all for not dumping nuclear waste or toxic chemicals into our water. Like, totally don't want that stuff to happen. But if you believe that we're actually causing climate change, give your head a shake. Give your head a shake.
What were we talking about before with the Philip experiment? Like, they're creating the tulpa, they're creating the religion, and it's a fear-based religion.
It's, oh God, we are completely in a fear-based religion now. Okay, and I do recall his name, the gentleman I was talking about. His name is Jim Lee. He has his website called Climate Watcher. I was on another podcast with him. Amazing. He actually said, and this is something so everybody can think about, that they had a 9/11 presented a perfect opportunity for a scientific study. Okay. And I know this sounds cold and whatnot, but hear me out. 9/11, what did they do? They grounded all these planes. No, there was zero planes flying at all. Well, there might have been like actual like military, but so what had happened is that there were no climate trails, okay? Climate trails anymore in the sky. And they're like, okay, so what's going to happen is now that we have removed this cloud cover, everything's going to heat up, right? Because that is what they want you to believe, that is what's happening. If there's no cloud cover, things are going to heat up. They said it was the exact inverse, because the cloud cover was like a blanket. The heat was still getting through, and it was holding it in and warming it up. They actually saw a decrease in the mean temperature throughout the whole United States, because the temperatures, it was allowed to escape at night.
Right. Right. And
It makes sense.
there's this big problem when it comes to their theories about greenhouse gas effects. This is why they had to change it from the greenhouse gas effect over to climate change, which
Yeah.
is you can't see carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It's
Hmm.
not reflecting any light. It's not trapping any heat. The heat radiates right through carbon dioxide. The number one heater of the Earth's atmosphere is H2O, water
Yeah.
vapor, just like you were saying. So, if you think about Venus, right? It's an incredibly hot planet with a large cloud cover all over the outside of it. And it's just heated up constantly because none of the heat can escape the atmosphere.
Yeah.
What
And
is chemtrails going to do?
exactly, and as soon as you say that word, chemtrails, people go off, they fly off, but for people who are like not on board and they don't believe in chemtrails, I want you to search stratospheric engineering. Okay, cloud seeding. Oh no, that doesn't exist. 100% it exists. It literally is even advertised on billboards. When I was living in Canada, they advertised cloud seeding because that's one thing that they did. This has all been going on for so long, and you just have been orchestrated, or you have been trained to think of it as like this is nonsense. Perhaps we won't call it chemtrails; we'll call it contrails. Okay, and this is legitimate. This is legitimate. There is things that are happening that are being sprayed, and it's not. I want to make this clear. It's not like they have nozzles sticking out the back spraying. Okay, so Jim Lee goes into this quite like he went to debunk chemtrails, and he ended up saying they're not chemtrails, they're contrails. And this is what it is. It's the exhaust, and it's what the exhaust is coming out. It is actually, he stated all these particles, like these graphene particles that are coming out. And he's like, there's no reason that this should be in the fuel, but this is what's happening. And he was explaining that there is a way that they can actually prevent that. Again, it's not a little button. I know sometimes it looks like maybe there is buttons. Maybe there are ones out there that, well, when I was saying these cloud seeding ones, yes, they are literally spraying. They are doing that, but every regular aircraft that's flying, it is the fuel that they're burning, specific fuel that they're burning. That's with the contaminants are within the fuel, and it comes out as the exhaust. So you got to watch, you got to look into that. I was going to say something else, but I totally forgot because I went off on another tangent. But yeah, there it's so much is happening. Yeah, we're talking about, like the stratospheric engineering and, this cloud cover. And the reason why they actually switched from greenhouse gases is because if you actually think about it, greenhouse gases, it's good for the environment. And that's another thing, is our planet is turning greener. We are, because like things are growing a lot more, because that's what carbon dioxide is, what plants crave. It's not Brano or whatever that was from Idiocracy.
It
They
gets
crave
worse.
carbon dioxide. Yeah.
It gets worse. So once you realize they're talking about, let's say, fossil fuels,
Yeah.
that means that at one point in time, all of that carbon dioxide that's now trapped in oil used to be in our atmosphere. We're carbon dioxide deficient. All of those other times throughout history, they had way more carbon dioxide and they had way more life on the planet. And now we're carbon deficient.
And that's why things were so much bigger as well, is because everything grew so much more. The megafauna.
Right. So, that's an important thing to keep in mind. Maybe if humans have any purpose on this earth, maybe it's to release some of that carbon dioxide so that we can get more life on the planet. If we are, somehow related to the spirit of this place, look, we've saved the trees using oil. I don't know if you've seen pictures from back in the 1860s during the Civil War. The entire East Coast was clear cut. You could see from Virginia to New York, there was no trees. They had cut them all down for fuel. The only thing that stopped that from happening more was the fact that we had oil. So,
Yeah,
there's so much we're not being told.
Exactly. And Canada is paying all this carbon tax, and we are like we're not net zero, we're like net positive to the extreme, but we're paying all these carbon tax. Maybe, maybe if we pay a little more tax, we'll solve this climate change. I'm like this is so ridiculous.
It's naked thievery. They want you to
Yeah.
know how badly they're ripping you off because it's a demoralization tactic. Again, it goes back to this religion of fear.
Yeah, the religion of fear, the religion of science and with fear together. They put that together, and it's not real science; it's twisted science.
Every single time, and it's twisted just enough. Because I like this terminology I heard from a former Mormon. It's the real Mormons are never arguing online, right? The fake Mormons, the ones that go every Christmas and Easter, those are the ones arguing about Mormonism, because they don't really know about it and they want to maintain their pride. They're kind of in that, that region where your self-confidence is way off the roof because you don't know very much. So those are the people who are arguing for it. And I see the same thing with climate change. The people who are the most adamant about it know very little about what they're even talking about. And then you bring up studies that they may have seen before, but they can't put the pieces together. It's like, no, they're telling you right here, it means it's useless. It doesn't matter. And they're like, well, I don't see that. I see the other flowery language and I don't understand exactly the data I'm looking at. It's crazy.
Yes. It is extremely crazy, and whenever you see Bill Gates talks or anything, he usually has this book laying out in plain sight, which is how to lie with statistics. Okay. You can take the statistics and make them work for you. It's ridiculous. And we have to dig deeper than just what we're being told. And that's on every one of you, including myself. And I get lazy sometimes, but we need to not just believe what we're told. Don't believe me. Don't believe Headless. You need to do the work for yourself. Like one of my favorite shows that I watch, my wife got me into, which is The High Wire with Del Bigtree. And he'll tell you everything, but he provides you with all the information so you can do it yourself. And it's amazing to do that. We need to do that ourselves. It's our responsibility. Don't give that away. Don't give that away.
Well, I think there is a cutoff between intelligence and this hyper materialism that we call science today.
Yes.
And so when people start to experience nature and start to get out there and realize this place is a lot bigger and a lot broader and way more interesting than we're being told about, that's when you start to see that shift. Oh, excuse me.
Bless you.
But yeah, you start to understand that the properties and the principles that happen in the scientific realm can be applied to the spiritual realm just by, looking at things from slightly different angle. And this, I think, is one of the big benefits of living in this sort of transitional period, is that we've seen one wave of like technology happen. But in human development, the next phase, I believe the final frontier, is going back to the spiritual realm and starting to understand that better.
I agree. And I think that science and spirituality, magic, need to be married again. I believe there's so much more to it. They've divorced and they separated so much that it's ridiculous. So they need to come back together again. Otherwise, we're going to have a split. Like the world is going to split.
Right. But, that's always been prophesied about. That big split, it's coming. The idea is, well, maybe we get a couple more people on our side and they can start to see the world for how it really is instead of the world that's been presented to them, this sort of religion of fear.
Yeah. You can always hope, and we had a great awakening the last 5 years. There was a great awakening, but I also realized that there is a great ignorance as well, great blindness. And I saw that within my own family where, deceiving as well, where they're like, yeah, we're with you. And as soon as I moved away, they all fell. And I was very disappointed. And it was almost some of them rubbed it in my face as well, you know, and it was like I was very disappointed. So I just want to bring this up. I don't know what's happening, but my battery on my laptop is dying.
You got it
Really,
plugged in?
I have it plugged in. And I'm like, what is going on? I'm like, it looks like it's dropping as if it wasn't plugged in. And so that's why I was kind of like fidgeting around and checking all my connections. And I did have some other programs open, which shouldn't matter, but it's really strange that it's sucking the battery out of my laptop. I don't know what is going on. Really peculiar.
Well, I think this is probably a good place to wrap it up. We're at about an hour 40, so this has been a great talk. I love
Yeah,
the interaction we're doing here. I think there's
do
a
too.
lot of very interesting ideas that a lot of people can benefit from if they're ready to be entertained. Entertainment purposes only.
Entertainment purposes only. Yes. I am not a doctor. I cannot prescribe anything. This is just it's just for entertainment. Yeah.
Right. We'll see how much longer that lasts when it comes to YouTube.
Exactly. I'm gonna message you to tell you if my laptop starts charging back up as soon as we end this. If we end this and it starts charging back up, and I'm like, suspicious.
Well, these are dangerous conversations and these are dangerous times. So everybody out there, stay prepared and look to the spirit realm and find out who you really are. The mystery's in you as well as out there. I'll see you again next time.